Роберт Фримен. Продюсер Брайан Джей Коэн. Автор идеи Эрон Макгрудер.
Мой дед Роберт Джебедая Фримен, прожив жизнь полную странных приключений и досадных неудач, решил провести последние годы в уютной атмосфере пригорода и переехал в идеальный дом в идеальном районе, но все еще ищет идеальную женщину. Почему так, понятия не имею.
Увеличь. Продли.
Хочу конфету! Ненавижу тебя!
Херберт, помнишь наш уговор? Как мы договорились вести себя в магазине?
Дай конфету! Дай конфету! Хочу конфету! И жвачку! Дай мне! Дай мне! И еще макарон! И
Херберт!
каши, спагетти!
Херберт!
Не ребенок, а наказание.
Когда он так себя ведет, я не знаю, как его остановить.
Ремнем не пробовали?
Как ремнем?
Вот, тебе за то, что ты меня позоришь. Совсем обнаглел. Не всякий мужчина поможет женщине в беде.
Ну и... Просто терпеть не могу непоротых детей.
Я кристалл, как шампанское.
А я дед.
Привет, детка. Да, лучше не надо. Меня зовут Кристалл, как шампанское. Так зовут стриптизерш. Кристалл, как шампанское. Ты не стриптизерша? И что же ты знаешь о стриптизершах, малыш? Немного, но знаю, что обычно их зовут как выпивку. Обожаю магазины в богатых районах. Продукты гораздо лучше.
Тысячи эксклюзивных сериалов, сотни популярных шоу.
White folk the truth. You understand me? Shoot. Making white people ride. You better learn how to lie like me. I'm gonna find me a white man and lie to him right now.
Deep in the mountains, your screams will reach far and wide, but they will fade into nothing. This story, titled The Hidden Basement in the Cabin, from a viewer called Nash99, left me feeling unnerved, but also curious. It involves a disturbing discovery, but it's the hints of a conspiracy, possibly even involving the government, that really struck me. What's going on in the Rockies? What did Nash99 and his friend find? This seems to be the kind of information worth killing for. Take this story as an important lesson about the cabin in Colorado you should never enter. Just figuring out whether I wanted to tell this story or not has been a struggle. Part of me wants to forget it happened, but another part wants me to get it out there. Maybe as a warning. Maybe to finally tell someone who might believe me. This happened in 2021 in the Colorado Rockies, specifically around Idaho Springs. After what happened there, I can barely drive through without breaking into a cold sweat. You can call me Nash. That's not my actual name, but it is a nickname my friends call me. I thought it would be a good in-between for sharing this story online. I was 24 years old when this went down, working part-time at a tire shop in Georgetown, all while taking online courses for a business degree that I still haven't finished, but my real passion, if you could call it that, was urban exploration. Emphasis on the was. You're probably thinking something like, oh, another 20-year-old somebody with a camera thinking they're going to be the next big urbex YouTuber. But that wasn't it at all. First off, it's not technically urbex out here. It's more like rurex, rural exploration. Though I think some people call it rural urban exploration, which sounds contradictory. Also, I did have a decent camera setup, a Canon 5D Mark III, which I'd saved up for a couple of years to buy. And rather than going the YouTuber route, I made a little extra cash selling my photos. There's a company that I can't name due to NDAs that buys stock photos of abandoned places for various projects. Movie location scouts, video game designers, those sorts of things. They would pay maybe $100 per photo if they accepted it. Which sounds great until you realize they'd only accepted about 12 of my photos in 2 years. So no, I wasn't in it for the money or the fame. I was in it for something else entirely. Rural exploration was never supposed to be a career, or even a serious hobby for me. It started off as an escape mechanism, a way to deal with some pretty heavy stuff that happened when I was a kid. I come from what used to be a really close, happy family. I've got 2 sisters and 2 brothers. I'm the middle child, which probably explains a lot about my personality, if you believe in that birth order psychology stuff. Growing up in Littleton, we were like something out of a sitcom. We had family game nights every Friday, camping trips every summer up in the Rocky Mountain National Park. I've got great memories of us skiing at Loveland every winter weekend. My parents were high school sweethearts who still held hands at King Soopers after 20 years of marriage. They were the couple all their friends looked up to, the ones who renewed their vows on their 10th anniversary with this big party where my dad serenaded my mom with their wedding song. It was honestly kind of nauseating how in love they were, but it also made our house feel incredibly safe and stable. But then, when I was 16, everything fell apart. I came home from school one day in March to find my mom crying in the kitchen with divorce papers spread out in front of her. For me, there was no warning, no big fights that we kids had witnessed. It was just suddenly boom, divorce. My dad had already moved out that morning while we were at school too. To this day, neither of them will tell us kids exactly what happened, even though I think we deserve to know. All we do know is that they went from being madly in love to refusing to be in the same room together, practically overnight. That does something to a kid. Even if I was 16, almost an adult, I think it messed me up pretty bad. I've actually read about how kids at certain ages often react to divorce at the same psychological level as someone in your family dying. And I think that was true for me. It wasn't just that my parents split up. It was that everything I believed about love and stability and family just evaporated. If my parents, who seemed so perfect together, couldn't make it work, what hope was there for anyone? For me? Anyway, I don't want to get into my whole sob story here, but it does lead up to my experience. So I started to have trouble sleeping. I'd lie in bed replaying old family videos in my head, trying to spot signs of what was coming that we'd all missed. By 2 a.m. on some nights, I'd give up on sleep and I would sneak out of the house. At first, I would just walk around the neighborhood, but that got boring fast, and the local cops didn't take too kind to kids wandering in the night. One night, I discovered this abandoned mining office up on the old Chicago Creek Road, about 4 miles from our house. It was a 2-story building from the 1960s, left over from when they were still trying to revive silver mining in the area. The fence around it had a gap where local kids had bent it back and slipped through. So I did the same. I know it sounds stupid and dangerous. A 16-year-old kid hanging out alone in some abandoned building on a mountain in the middle of the night. There was something about being in that empty, quiet space that felt right. It kind of matched how I felt inside. Hollow, abandoned, forgotten. I would sit on the second floor, where there was this old desk chair that someone had left behind. And I'd smoke some cigarettes that I had stolen from my mom's purse. And I would think. Sometimes I'd cry. And out there I could even scream. And nobody could hear me, except maybe some unfortunate elk. It became my sanctuary, where I could go and fall apart and put myself back together, then go back home. Over time, the exploring became more important than the emotional release. I started to bring a flashlight, then a better flashlight. Eventually, I got a headlamp so I could keep my hands free. I'd explore every room, every closet, every stairwell. I would find old documents from back in the 60s and read them like they really meant something to me. There were geological surveys, coffee mugs, a desk drawer full of elevation maps or something. Each was like an artifact, someone else's story or life that I could distract myself with. By the time I graduated high school, I'd explored probably a dozen different abandoned places in those mountains. I'd had a few close calls, though. This one time, I stumbled into what was clearly a substance cooking operation in some old cabin, and I had to hide behind a woodpile for about an hour until the people who saw me couldn't find me and left. Another time, a sheriff's deputy spotted me coming out of an abandoned ski lodge, so I had to bushwhack through the forest in the dark to avoid him. He probably could have caught me if he'd really wanted to, but I think chasing some kid through the mountains at night wasn't really worth it to him. After I turned 19, I moved out of my mom's house and I got an apartment in Golden with 3 friends from high school, one of which was Janum. Everyone called him that because he insisted on going by his initials for some reason, J.N., and we just kinda went with Janum. Then there was Martin and Eddie. The apartment was a dump, but it was freedom. I was working at the tire shop by then, making enough to cover my share of rent and start saving for that camera I mentioned. And at least every weekend, I'd spend a night exploring. Let me tell you about Janum, because understanding our friendship is important to understanding why what happened hit us both so hard. We had met freshman year of high school in detention. The thing about Janum is that underneath all his posturing about being a photographer and his terrible taste in music, he was genuinely one of the most loyal people I'd ever met. When my dad forgot my 18th birthday, Janum organized a surprise party. When I got fired from my first job, he got me the hookup at the tire shop where his cousin worked. He was the kind of friend who would drive 40 minutes at 2 a.m. to pick you up from a bad date, no questions asked. Soon I got him to come with me on my explorations, pretty regularly too, once we moved in together. At first, I think he just didn't want me going alone, but eventually he got genuinely into it. He'd like to spend time researching the history of places, and he'd get real excited whenever he learned about the families who used to live in abandoned homesteads or things like that. He always approached our explorations like an archaeologist, creating elaborate narratives about the people who used to inhabit the spaces. Martin came once to an old lodge we visited. We had convinced him it would be like a video game in real life, which in retrospect was a stupid comparison. About half an hour in, we heard what turned out to be a mountain lion screaming in the distance. If you've never heard one, it sounds exactly like a woman being murdered. And I swear Martin nearly pissed himself. He never came with us again, and we never let him forget about it. Eddie thought we were both idiots who were going to get murdered by mountain folk or fall through a rotten floor, which, looking back, he wasn't entirely wrong. By 2021, Janum and I had a pretty good system going. We'd scout locations during the day, look for places that seemed truly abandoned. No fresh tracks in the snow or signs of squatters, especially no drug stuff. We had a whole kit too, headlamps with red filters to preserve night vision, and backup flashlights. We'd come prepared with first aid kits, dust masks, gloves, portable phone chargers, and even bear spray just in case. I mean, this is Colorado we're talking about. We would bring a crowbar too, but we tried not to break anything if we could avoid it. We were not doing this to be jerks, trashing places up or stealing things. We were there to document and appreciate these forgotten places. That brings me to the story. Janum found this place on an old Forest Service map earlier that week. A large cabin complex up a forestry road between Idaho Springs and Mount Evans. From what we could tell, it had been some kind of private hunting lodge from the 70s that was abandoned after a fire damaged part of it. The really exciting part was that it was massive for a mountain cabin. The main structure alone looked to be about 8,000 square feet, based on old real estate records, with several outbuildings. Places that big usually had interesting stuff left behind, because it was too expensive and difficult to haul everything down the mountain. "This is it," Janum had said, practically bouncing in his desk chair as he showed me the aerial photos. "This is the one that's going to get us those sweet stock photo dollars." "You said that about the last 5 places," I'd reminded him. But I was excited too. The scale of it was impressive, and the fire damage meant it probably hadn't been completely picked clean by other explorers or scrappers. We spent the next few days preparing. Janum was obsessing about it practically. I recall this checklist he showed me on his phone. Things to do, what to bring. He was checking weather reports every few hours, calculating sunset times and moon phases for whatever reason. He wanted to go on Friday, but I had to work late, so we pushed it to a Saturday instead. I remember him being weirdly anxious about that delay, like he had a premonition or something. But that's probably just my mind playing tricks on me in hindsight. Maybe we could have avoided the horror if we had gone on Friday. Who knows? We loaded everything into Janum's 4Runner, a beat-up 2003 model that his parents had given him when he graduated high school. That thing had 200,000 miles on it, and made some rather concerning noises whenever you turned to the left. And yet, it was perfect for getting to hard-to-reach places. The drive up there started like any other Rurex night. We stopped at the 7-Eleven in Idaho Springs for Red Bulls and beef jerky. The guy who worked there, Sal, always joked about us being ghost hunters. Then again, he may not have been joking and honestly thought we were ghost hunters. "You boys find any ghosts yet?" he asked. "Not yet," Janum said, "but tonight feels lucky." Looking back, that feels like foreshadowing, but at the time we just laughed. The drive up the highway was beautiful in that eerie way mountain roads are at night. The temperature had dropped below 25 degrees, and there was frost forming on the windshield. We had to use the defroster on full blast, which meant the heat was cooking us even with the windows cracked. Janum was playing this terrible SoundCloud rapper he'd discovered, and we spent most of the drive arguing about whether the guy was genuinely bad or so bad that he was accidentally genius. About halfway up, we passed an old Forest Service gate that was supposed to be locked but was hanging open, luckily. The chain had been cut years ago and was never replaced. We parked about a quarter-mile from the cabin, behind a stand of lodgepole pines. Always hide your vehicle if you can. That's Rurex and Urbex 101. We then hiked the rest of the way. The moon was almost full that night, so natural visibility was pretty good. "There it is," Janum whispered, even though there was no reason to whisper. The building materialized out of the darkness like something from a scary movie. A big old log structure with a stone foundation and huge windows, most of which were broken. Half the roof had caved in from snow load, but the other half looked surprisingly intact. Even in its destroyed state, you could tell this place had been magnificent once. "Holy crap," Janum said as we got closer. "Look at the size of this place. Someone had serious money." "Had" being the operative word there, I said, running my flashlight over the carved wooden door that hung off its hinges. "This place looks like it could have taken years to make." "And now it's rotting in the mountains," Janum said. "See, that's what I mean about stories." He pointed out the carvings on the door. Carvings of elk, bears, mountains, all done by hand. Somebody cared enough to commission this door, and an artist was paid to spend months carving it. And now it's just forgotten. He looked a little sad. We slipped through without even having to move the door. Inside, our flashlights revealed what had once been a stunning great room, with 30-foot ceilings and a massive stone fireplace. Antler chandeliers hung at crazy angles from the exposed beams, covered in cobwebs. The place smelled like rot and mold and animal crap. But underneath all that, I could still faintly smell old wood polish. There was still furniture there, like some leather couches, which had been torn apart, probably by animals. There was a pool table with peeling felt, and an old piano so warped that when Janum pressed a key, it made a sound like a dying animal. We began to explore systematically. The kitchen had commercial-grade equipment, now rusted beyond recognition. In what must have been an office, we found hunting permits from 1978 and business correspondence about guided elk hunts. The really interesting part was the wing that hadn't been damaged by the roof collapse. It was like stepping back in time. Wood paneling, orange shag carpet, wood grain electronics from the 70s. There was even a reel-to-reel tape player and a bar stocked with empty bottles of liquor I'd never heard of. We'd been there for about an hour, and I was getting some great shots of decay and abandonment. Then Janum called out from somewhere deeper in the house.
"Dude, you need to see this."
I found him in what looked like a utility room at the back of the intact wing. Unlike the rest of the cabin, this room was sparse and utilitarian. And in the floor was this trap door with a padlock on it that had been cut. "Maybe it's a wine cellar," I suggested. "In a utility room?" Janum was already pulling the trapdoor open. "This is hidden for a reason." The trapdoor revealed a ladder going down into complete darkness. Our flashlight showed it went down maybe 15 feet into what looked like a natural cave that had been expanded and reinforced with concrete. "These mountains are full of old mine shafts," I said, though something about this felt different. "Do you think maybe they built over one?" "Only one way to find out," Janum said, already starting down the ladder. And so, we went down. I followed Janum. The temperature dropped noticeably as we descended. At the bottom, we found ourselves in a tunnel carved from rock and reinforced with concrete archways every 10 feet or so. The ceiling was low enough that we had to duck slightly, and the walls were damp with mountain runoff. "This isn't a mine," Janum said. He ran his hand along the two smooth walls. "Someone put serious work into this." The tunnel went straight for about 50 feet, then opened up into a larger chamber. And that's when things got weird. The first thing we noticed was that this room actually had power. There were LED work lights on stands, all connected to a generator that was still warm to the touch. The room itself was maybe 30 by 40 feet, carved from the rock but with a smooth concrete floor, and it wasn't empty. "Janum," I whispered. My throat felt suddenly dry. "This isn't a good idea. I think we need to leave, now." But he was already moving forward, drawn by the horror of what we were seeing. There were chains bolted into the walls at various heights, a stained mattress in one corner that looked disturbingly recent. There were blue industrial tarps spread out on the floor, with these dark stains and what looked like scratches, where someone had tried to grip the floor. "What the heck is this place?" Janum's voice was barely a whisper. His usual joking demeanor was completely gone. He seemed scared. We then smelled a certain smell. Not that smell of abandonment I described before. This smelled organic and rusty at the same time. "We're leaving, Janum," I said. I grabbed his arm. "Right now!" "Wait, do you hear that?" he said, pulling away from me. I stopped and listened. There was a sound from the back of the chamber, a soft whimper almost like an injured animal. We both froze. Our flashlights swung toward the sound at the same time, toward the part of the room that was darkest, where those LEDs didn't reach. "Oh crap," Janum breathed. "Oh crap, oh crap, oh crap." She was huddled in the furthest corner, partially hidden behind one of the concrete pillars. She was young, maybe early 20s, wearing something like a dirty hospital gown that might have been white once, but was now gray and brown with filth. Her feet were bare and bloody from the rough floor. Her hair was matted and tangled, hanging in clumps. And when our lights landed on her face, her eyes were wide open, but unfocused, staring through us at something only she could see. "Oh Christ," Janum gasped. We began to walk towards her. His hands were shaking so bad, his flashlight beam was dancing all over the walls. "Miss, hey miss, we're going to help you. We're going to get you out of here, okay?" She didn't reply to him, didn't even blink. She kept staring with those empty eyes, like she wasn't really home anymore. I'd seen that look once before, on a documentary about catatonic patients, like her mind had gone somewhere else to escape whatever had happened to her in this room. "Nash, we have to get her out of here," Janum said. His voice was all wobbly. "We can't just leave her here." I know, I replied. I pulled out my phone. There was no signal, of course. We were too deep in the mountains, and now we were underground. "Can you carry her? We need to..." The ladder rattled behind us. The sound was like ice water down my spine. Metal on metal, slow, terrifying. Someone was coming down. "Hide," I hissed. But there was nowhere to go. The room was mostly open, just the support pillars and some equipment along the walls. A figure dropped the last few feet, landing in a crouch like some kind of animal. He stood up real slow, and I'll never forget what he looked like. Tall, around 6'2", wearing a thick Carhartt jacket with the hood up despite us being underground. His face was concealed in shadow, but I could see his breath coming out in puffs. In his hand was something I'd never seen before. Some sort of machete, but with a deeply serrated edge that looked designed to cause maximum damage. Its metal was dark and stained with something I didn't want to think about. "Well," he said, his voice surprisingly calm. "This is unfortunate." Janum stepped forward a bit. "We were just exploring. We didn't know anyone was here. We'll leave." "No, you won't," the man said simply. Then the girl made a sound, like a dying animal, and I heard her shift behind me. The man's head snapped towards her, roaring, "Shut up!" That one moment was all we needed. Janum grabbed one of the LED lights and hurled it at the man's head. It connected with a crack, and the man stumbled backward. We sprinted for the ladder. I hit it first and flew up, with Janum right behind me. Below us, the man's footsteps were getting louder, closer. We burst through the trapdoor and ran through the cabin, jumping over broken furniture, slipping on debris. Behind us, I could hear him going up the ladder. We made it outside and ran full speed toward where we parked. I nearly ran into a few trees in the darkness, stumbling over roots and rocks. That freezing cold and thin mountain air made every breath burn. But we didn't stop. I knew what could happen if we did. When we reached the Forerunner, Janum's hands were shaking so bad he dropped the keys twice before managing to start it. As we tore down that rutted forestry road, I looked back and I saw a figure standing at the tree line, watching us leave. Just standing there, not pursuing, like he knew something we didn't. "The girl," I gasped, still trying to catch my breath. "We have to go back for her." "Are you insane?" Janum was driving way too fast for the road conditions. The Forerunner was sliding around corners, the headlights swinging wildly across the trees. "We're not going back there. We're calling the cops. Let them handle it." With how tightly he was grabbing the steering wheel, he was starting to worry me. The vehicle was weaving slightly. I had never seen him so scared. Hell, I'd never been this scared. My entire body felt like it was vibrating. Maybe that's what adrenaline feels like. I'd never felt it before. "Pull over, you're gonna crash," I said. "I'm not stopping till we're off this freaking mountain." When we got back to where we had cell service, about 5 miles down the highway, he did pull over at a scenic overlook. We sat there for a minute with the engine running, heater blasting, both of us trying to think of what we needed to do, of what we even saw. "What the heck was that?" Janum finally said. "What the actual heck did we just see?" "I don't know, and I don't want to know," I said. I had my phone in my hands, trembling still. "But that girl, Jesus, Janum, she looked like she had been there for I don't even know how long." "Her eyes," he said, and I knew exactly what he meant. Those empty, unfocused eyes would haunt me for the rest of my days. I finally called 911, trying to keep my voice as steady as I could, to explain to the dispatcher what we'd found. The dispatcher took our report seriously enough. Abandoned cabin, possible kidnapping victim, an armed and possibly dangerous suspect. She said they would send deputies immediately and asked if we could wait at the bottom of the forestry road to guide them up. They want us to wait," I told Janum after hanging up. "Screw all that," he said immediately. "What if that guy comes down? What if he follows us?" "He's not going to leave the girl there as evidence, I'm sure." "You don't know that." Janum got irritated. "We don't know what he's capable of. Did you see that freaking blade? That wasn't a camping knife, Nash. That was made for..." He couldn't finish the sentence. But I knew what he meant. That blade was for hurting people, killing people, for cutting into things that didn't want to be cut. We ended up waiting anyway, parked at the bottom of that forestry road with the doors locked and the engine running, ready to bolt if we saw anyone coming down. Janum could not stop fidgeting, constantly checking the mirrors, tapping his fingers on the steering wheel compulsively. "She was wearing a hospital gown," he said suddenly. "Why was she wearing a hospital gown?" "I don't know, man. Did he take her from a hospital? Or did he put her in it? Why did he... Janum, I don't know. I don't know, man. But the chains, those chains on the wall, there were multiple sets at different heights. That means... Oh, God, that means she wasn't the first. That thought made me physically ill. I prayed Janum wasn't right. But if he was, how many other people had been in that underground chamber? And why? It took 2 hours for a sheriff's SUV to finally show up. 2 deputies, both looking annoyed at being called out to the mountains in the middle of the night, followed us up the mountain. Janum drove even more erratically than before, constantly checking the rearview mirror to make sure they were still following us, and that no one else was. When we got back to that cabin, everything had changed. The trapdoor was now closed and had a new padlock on it, a heavy-duty one that looked fresh from a hardware store. The first deputy, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, tried his best to break it, while his partner covered him with her hand on her service weapon. It's not budging, the first officer said, after a few minutes of trying with bolt cutters. Then I heard something from their radio. Another emergency. A multi-car accident on the interstate, requiring all available units. Look, we'll come back with proper equipment, he told us, taking our contact information. First thing in the morning. We'll have a whole team up here, don't you worry about it. But they never did come back. When I called the sheriff's office the next day, they said they'd investigated and found nothing but an old root cellar. No evidence of a girl or recent activity. The deputy I spoke to, different from the ones we'd met, suggested we'd maybe stumbled upon some urban legend hunters trying to scare people, or at the very least had altitude-induced hallucinations from the thin air. Altitude what? I'd practically screamed into the phone. We live in Colorado. We're used to the altitude. Son, I'm just telling you what the report says. The deputies found nothing suspicious. Janum took the news even worse than I did. He became convinced that the man from that cabin had connections in the sheriff's department and stayed up until 4 a.m. reading conspiracy forums and missing persons reports. Man, 3 women have gone missing from hiking trails in this area in the last decade, he told me one night, a laptop in his hand, all in their 20s with dark hair. I wasn't sure if that related to what we'd found, but I didn't entirely disregard it. He had installed a new deadbolt on his bedroom door and would constantly check the apartment locks. He got my license plate, man, he kept saying. He knows what car I drive. Look, Janum, some random mountain psycho can't just look up your address from your plate number. I tried to reassure him. How do you know he's random? That chamber wasn't built by some homeless drifter. That took planning, resources. He actually had a point, and it terrified the hell out of me that I hadn't thought of it until then. What in the world did we stumble on? It took a couple weeks before I felt comfortable enough to get back out there, to go back out on my Rurex expeditions. As I told you before, it was my way to cope with things, and I needed to cope badly. On a Thursday night, I headed back out. I didn't go to that cabin, obviously. I was never going to go back there. But I went somewhere else, somewhere easy and safe. There was an abandoned gas station at this junction, an old Conoco from the 1960s that had been closed for at least a decade. A single-story, small place right off the road where people would see if anything went wrong. This kind of place might actually have some interesting vintage signage that the company would want photos of. I went alone. Janum refused to go anywhere near an abandoned building. It was around 9 p.m. when I pulled up to that abandoned Conoco station. The place was perfect for what I needed. The old pumps were rustic, and there was plenty of vintage signage, and with it being right off the road, I felt safe. at least somewhat. I was inside taking photos when I saw headlights come up. A van parked right next to my car, blocking it in. The driver got out, someone with a hood over their head and a very familiar build. It was him. I watched, still as a statue, as he broke into my locked car somehow and leaned inside for about 30 seconds, then stepped back. He walked to the middle of the parking area, looked directly at where I was hiding, pointed at my car and gave a thumbs up. Then he drove away. Only after waiting 10 more minutes did I decide to creep out to my car. I circled around to the driver's side door, freaked out that he had put a bomb or a trap in there. Eventually, the desire to get the heck out of there as soon as possible overwhelmed me, so I opened the door. On the driver's seat was a crumpled up piece of paper. I picked it up and spread it open. It said, "I know both of you saw." I drove home, probably doing 90 on the highway. That note was sitting on my passenger seat like it was a live grenade. My heart was going even faster, 100 miles per minute. I could barely hold on to the steering wheel. Reminded me of Janum driving down that mountain hysterically. What did that note mean? Of course we saw. We saw the woman, we saw him. But was it a threat? A warning? What did he want from us? When I got back to the apartment, Janum was in the living room playing Call of Duty with the volume too loud. He tended to do that when he was stressed out. I considered not showing him the note, but I figured he probably deserved to know. So I showed it to him, and I watched his face morph from anxiety to terror. "Oh, bro, we need to move," he said. "Pack our crap and just go. Tonight." "And go where?" I asked. "We don't really have the money for a hotel. Our names are on this lease." 3 knocks came from the front door. It was so loud and sudden that Janum actually threw his controller across the room. We both froze and stared at the door. It was 10:30 p.m. Nobody would be visiting this late. I crept over to the peephole. There was a man outside, but no hood. This guy was wearing regular clothes. Joggers, a CU Boulder hoodie that was pulled down revealing a shaved head, and he was holding something in his hand. I watched, and he brought it to his mouth, exhaling a cloud of vapor. Just a vape, a normal-looking guy. I looked back at Janum. He was holding on to a piece of 2x4 that he kept in his room, his version of self-defense. I would have gone for the crowbar, but that's just me. "It's not him," I whispered. "Looks like a different guy." "Well, don't open it," Janum whispered back. But something about the casual way the guy was standing, vaping and looking around like he was waiting for a pizza delivery, made me curious. I opened our door, but I kept the chain on. Hello?" I said through the gap. The man looked at me, took another drag from his vape, and smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile, but more like he had just won a bet with himself. "You Nash?" he asked. I didn't answer, but something in my face must have confirmed it. He laughed and shook his head. Do you need help with something?" I asked, trying to remain calm. "Nah," he said, turning to walk away. But then he stopped, looked back over his shoulder, and said, "But now I've seen. Just wanted to let you know." He gave me a thumbs up, that same exaggerated thumbs up the hooded man had given me, and he walked into the night. I slammed the door and locked everything. Deadbolt, chain. I even dragged a chair over to prop under the handle. Janum was on the phone already, with the police, but I could tell from his side of the conversation that we weren't going to be taken seriously. Some guy came to your door and said something weird? Oh, scary, but not a crime. No threats made. Nothing they can do. Have a nice night. The next morning, I went straight to the county sheriff's office. I insisted on filing a report in person, describing the man and explaining the connection to the cabin and the woman we'd found. The deputy taking my report looked skeptical the entire time. When I finished, he said, "Sounds like mountain people protecting a meth lab. They don't like outsiders finding their operations. And that woman was probably high out of her mind. They're warning you to stay away from their territory." "You've heard of meth cookers with underground bunkers?" I argued. "Who can easily break into locked cars? Who know our names and addresses?" He shrugged. "Look, son, unless someone actually commits a crime, there's not much we can do. My advice, stop breaking into abandoned buildings. It's dangerous, and it's illegal, and clearly you're stirring up the wrong people." I wanted to scream at him. But what was the point? They weren't going to help unless someone actually got hurt, which would probably be me or Janum. And would they help? Maybe not even then. The next 3 weeks were tense but uneventful. Janum and I both took time off work and stayed with our parents for a while. Him with his mom in Fort Collins, me with my dad in Colorado Springs. We kept in touch by text, both of us admitting how jumpy we were, basically waiting for something to happen. Martin and Eddie stayed at the apartment and reported nothing out of the ordinary. Maybe it was over, I started to think. Maybe we had been warned off, and as long as we stayed away from their territory or whatever, they'd leave us alone. I started to feel stupid for running away, for letting some probably drug-addled mountain hermits scare me out of my own apartment. So after nearly a month, I came back. Sadly, Janum stayed at his mom's. He said he was done with rural-urban exploration, done with the apartment, done with all of it. He was going to move back home permanently and finish his degree online. I couldn't blame him, but I also couldn't afford the apartment without his share of the rent, and I couldn't stay with my dad forever. My first night back was a Sunday. Martin and Eddie were both out. Martin was at his girlfriend's place, and Eddie worked a night shift at the Amazon warehouse. I was alone, trying to catch up on homework, when exhaustion hit me like a wall around 11 p.m. The stress and altitude changes had been messing with my sleep, and when it finally caught up with me, I crashed hard. I went to bed without even brushing my teeth. Yuck, I know. Barely managing to kick off my shoes before falling into bed. I was asleep in seconds. I woke up to the feeling that something was wrong. You know that feeling when your sleeping brain registers a change in the environment and makes you wake up? When I came to, my room was dark, but there was light coming from somewhere. It took my groggy brain a moment to process. My bedroom door was open. I never slept with it open, and through it, I could see that the front door to our apartment was also open, letting in the harsh light from the hallway. I sat up, more confused than scared at first. I assumed Martin had come home drunk and forgot to close the doors. But then, I saw him in the corner of my room where my desk created a pocket of deep shadow. Someone was standing there, perfectly still. "Real easy to get in here," the figure said, and I recognized that voice immediately. The hooded man. "Your locks are cheap. I've been thinking about killing you." He said it so matter-of-factly, like he was telling me about his weekend. I couldn't move or speak. I just couldn't believe what was happening. He took a step forward, and I could see more of him in the dim light. Same thick jacket, same obscured face, and in his right hand, that serrated blade catching what little light there was. "People don't know how to mind their own damn business," he continued, walking slowly toward the bed. You saw something you weren't supposed to see. You called people you should not have called. You made things complicated for me." He was at the foot of my bed now, and I still couldn't bring myself to move. It was like sleep paralysis, but I knew I was awake. This was real, and it was happening. "The thing is, I could kill you right now. Cut you up into pieces small enough to scatter around the mountains. Nobody would know what happened to you. You'd just be another missing person who was last seen breaking into abandoned places." He began to reach for my bedroom door with his free hand. He closed the door slowly, and that's what broke me from my stupor. The thought of being trapped in this room with him, with no escape route, it sent a lightning strike of pure adrenaline through my system. As he looked at the door, searching for a lock that he didn't know didn't exist. We never had locks on our bedroom doors in this place. I rolled off the opposite side of the bed and scrambled for the window. I'd never opened that window before. Honestly, didn't even know if it would open. But I yanked on it with every bit of strength I had. It stuck, then suddenly gave way, sliding up with a shriek of protesting metal. I heard him curse behind me, heard rapid footsteps coming around the bed, and I dove through that window. I landed hard on the concrete, awkwardly, on the walkway outside, rolling to absorb the impact but feeling like something in my shoulder popped. Then I was running, barefoot in only my boxers and t-shirt, sprinting down the alley behind our building in 40-degree weather. But quickly, I heard him behind me, those heavy footsteps. I ran as hard as my life would allow. I burst out onto the road, where there were still cars passing by, streetlights, witnesses. I spun around, and I saw the man stopping at the mouth of the alley, that weapon now hidden behind his back. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Him in the shadows of that alley, me in the middle of the street, like a crazy person in my underwear. Then, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the dark. A passing car honked at me, and I realized I was standing in traffic. I made it to the sidewalk and called 911 from a borrowed phone. This time, they took it seriously. Breaking and entering, assault with a deadly weapon, attempted murder. These were crimes they would actually respond to. It only took me almost getting cut into pieces. The police found our apartment door still open, some of the rooms ransacked, and the window I'd escaped through still gaping. They took fingerprints, but I knew they wouldn't find anything useful. This guy was too careful for that. They said they would increase patrols in our area, but what good would that do? I moved out the very next morning. I didn't pack most of my stuff. I grabbed what was important, my camera equipment, some clothes, some documents. Martin and Eddie moved out the same week too, after being told what happened. Our landlord was ticked off about breaking the lease. But I didn't care. I'd rather have bad credit than be dead. I moved in with my dad in Colorado Springs, and I haven't been back to the northern mountains since. I found out later from Martin that the county sheriff's office did eventually go back to that cabin again, but they found the whole thing had burned down, fully this time. Whether from arson or wildfire, they couldn't tell. There was no evidence of the underground chamber we'd found, no evidence of the girl. Nothing. But personally, I don't think they looked hard enough. I still have nightmares about her eyes, that empty stare, the sound we'd heard from behind us that caused that man to be distracted. I wonder, was she even actually alive when we found her? I can't even remember her breathing. Was the sound we heard some sort of death rattle? If she was alive, was she still there when the place went up in flames? Mostly, though, I have nightmares about him, standing in the corner of my room, telling me how easy it would be to make me disappear. It took me almost 2 years before I went back to exploring again. And even now, I only go to places that are well known, well documented, where other people regularly visit. I never go alone, and I always tell multiple people exactly where I'm going. I take a knife with me now, just in case, though my anti-gun dad actually insists that I get a gun anyway. I also moved into an apartment with real security, like an actual deadbolt that can't be pried apart or broken, at least not easily. I think the worst thing about all of this, though, is not knowing. Who was she? What was that room for? What did we find? Was it human trafficking or some kind of snuff film? Or a serial killer and his playground? Whoever he was, he knew how to find our names and our addresses. And I can't help but think that means he had connections. Speaking of which, I've since done some Googling about that location and the cabin itself. At one point, I found some interesting information. Apparently, that land had been leased by a government agency of some sort. It started back in about 2003, but what I couldn't find was any record of that lease being terminated or transferred, meaning the land that cabin sits on was leased out to some government people. How does that connect? Does it at all? Or am I just connecting ghost dots? I'm sorry if I don't have any answers or if this conclusion is unsatisfying. I've never told this story publicly before, and I'm only sharing it now anonymously because I feel like people should know. The Colorado mountains are beautiful, but they're also vast and isolated, perfect for hiding terrible secrets. If you're listening, and you're someone who enjoys urbex or rurex or whatever, be careful about every building you go into. I think the best advice I can give you is if you stumble upon a place that doesn't look quite as abandoned as you thought it would be, turn around and leave right then and right there. It's not worth it. It might seem like a good idea to explore forgotten places. It might feel nostalgic and wholesome to experience these settings lost to time. But if you're not careful, you'll get caught up in something that will drag your life into the pits of the underworld. Thank you for listening. This has been a special episode of Tales from the Break Room, a show you can also find on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcast app. I've been testing this new single story format. It allows me to dive deeper into certain stories, making their presentation more immersive and thrilling. And so far, reception has been great. But please, let me know in the comments if you think it's something I should continue to do. I hope you all have an incredible but safe Halloween filled with fun and candy. Until next time, everyone, I'm Darkness Prevails. It might be time for me to clock out, but I'll be back again real soon.
てゆく。王国が形を成してここへたどり着く。これから再びこの世界が語られていく。最後の果てにあなたたちが見るものとは。テルティオの物語、第3の大敗の幕が開ける。